Hello, my name is John Magnus, and I wanted to take a few minutes to tell you about an idea that I have that I believe will revolutionize not only the horse industry, but maybe the whole show industry and the FFA show system. Let me start by saying we all know there's a problem. Kids are leaving all of the show industry, but they're leaving AQHA at an alarming rate, as well as adults, of course. And you know, I've always thought you don't talk about a problem unless you have a solution. So here's the solution that I have. We've been involved in the horse business for about 30 years. We've owned mares and stallions and shown and done the whole thing. Maybe not on a top level, but we've still been involved. Well, several years ago, my daughters wanted to show a sheep with the kids in FFA, so we bought some sheep, and they showed sheep for about a year, and we had a lot of fun in that system. Well, they ended, their terminal show was the Oklahoma Youth Expo in Oklahoma City in March. And so when we showed up with our sheep, we were completely amazed. I was amazed. There were, I think they said, over 7,000 kids showing over 11,000 animals, just mainly from Oklahoma. And you think about how many kids are showing American quarter horses in Oklahoma, and that's drastically different. I don't know how many go, but I would say it's probably less than 20. I think in 4-H we have less than 200 showing horses at our state show lately. So I thought, man, if the kids could show horses at this show, what an amazing situation. If only 10% of those kids showed horses, we would be looking at about 1,100 horses every year, colt prospects, that would be needed to fulfill just a 10% share of this market. So it doesn't take a lot of imagination to see what this would do to the equine breeding business, as well as American quarter horses and the amount of people registering and owning American quarter horses. So after the show was over, I contacted the Sirloin Club and asked them what it would take or what the likelihood was, and they said no, they were drastically against horses because of the ag teachers are drastically against horses being involved in their show system. So I did a little research. I hired a couple ag teachers to complete some surveys at some conventions, and the result that they came up with was that the ag teachers are against horses because the kids in horses don't start with a prospect. They start with a finished horse who's probably been done by a professional trainer, and the kids whose parents spend the most on that horse and spend the most on riding lessons typically are the ones who are successful. It's completely different than what the FFA show system was intended to be. The second thing was they said our events had evolved to something that's not realistic with daily use that's needed in Oklahoma for horses. And you know, I kind of agree, they have kind of changed. The last thing is they said the use of professional trainers. They said the greatest danger that they have in their business, the reason that most of the kids don't come back and show with them is that some kids use professional trainers. We call them professional trainers. In their show system, they call them steer jocks. And they fit and prepare the animals for the kids and do all of the work. And the second reason they said that the kids didn't come back to their show system was that most of the animals they show are terminal, which means that you show a steer or the things that you make the big money at the sales with, and it's a terminal show. You put them, they get on a slaughter truck and they're killed at the end of the show. And that's pretty devastating for most kids who do that much work and get that attached to those animals. Well, anyway, I set out to come up with a system that they might be willing to accept. A group of us horsemen and youth all put our heads together, and we like the system that the stock horse of Texas uses, where it's a numeric system where every part of the show is scored similar to reining. And I've always heard that reining is supposed to be the most fair system in the world when it comes to equine competition. So we put this idea together where a kid would start with a prospect. He would have a series of events that he would do, and he would get scored based on how he completed all of these tasks. So once we got this done, we started to do some research, and we were at the 4-H district show, and I was talking to some of the kids about it, and one of the little girls, she said, well, what if instead of placing the final scores from the first to the last, what if it was like a test where you had to score a minimum score, and if you met that standard, you got the award? She said the reason she suggested that was if they were competing against a standard instead of each other, they would be more likely to collaborate and help and cooperate with each other. So I thought, that makes all the sense in the world. If you're familiar with the American Kennel Club and their dogs, they have field tests where whether you have a retriever or a pointer or a flusher, you can go through a field test, and these standards are escalating. I think the first one is a junior hunter, an intermediate hunter, and a master hunter. And it gives the people something to do with the dogs. It gives them something to do that's very difficult and challenging, and it adds value to the dogs when they're done. So I thought that is a no-brainer. So we put all of this down, and I called the AQHA to see what kind of support I could get. And I called up there, and I was amazed to find out at the American Quarter Horse Association that they don't have anyone on staff that is simply to promote the breed and to try to promote people to get into showing and owning American quarter horses. If I understood them correctly, the only marketing staff they had were the ones who market the information of AQHA members. They solicit corporations and they sell our information to horse trailer manufacturers, John Deere, different places like that, so that they can contact us and try to sell us products. And the AQHA makes a profit off of soliciting our information. So I kept digging, and they put me in contact with a young man named Todd Branson. Todd was in the youth part of AQHA, and later on became the director of marketing at the National Reining Horse Association for a short time. Well, Todd agreed on his own time to come to Oklahoma and to help me. So I got an appointment with Jack Statz, who is in charge of all of the FFA instructors in Oklahoma. And we have a lot of them. Every school, I think, but 3 schools maybe in Oklahoma has an FFA program. Our school has 3 FFA teachers and instructors in it. So that's a pretty big group of influence. So Todd and I met with him in Stillwater, Oklahoma. We presented this idea to him, and Jack really liked this idea, and he said he would do all he could to help us if we could get these standards in writing, and had a set of standards that was already predetermined and clearly understandable. And Jack said that he probably couldn't get us in OYE initially, but he could get us in one or both of the state fairs of Oklahoma, the one in Oklahoma City or the one in Tulsa. And that was encouraging that he wanted to help us do that. And then Jack asked a question that I hadn't really thought about, and he said, what about a sale? He said, what if we had a sale for the kids who had maybe started with a project and finished it through its 3-year-old year before they went to college, and we could sell these animals like we do steers at Fort Worth or Houston or San Antonio or even OYE. I think the top selling steer last year at Fort Worth brought $200,000, and that was down $40,000 from the one that sold in 2017. But Jack said we could take this money, we could give the kid who owned the horse a big portion of it, and then we could take the rest and put in a scholarship fund for all of the kids who compete in this program, and they could get a portion or apply for a portion of that scholarship money that was put in there. And I thought about it, and some of the best real money in our horse industry is those ranch horses that are being sold, and the people who are buying them aren't people who want to rope or use them on a ranch. They're just normal, everyday people who are willing to spend a little bit more money to have a horse that's been there and done that and safe. So I thought this would be a perfect blend for the people who are given so much money for ranch horses at these ranch horse sales, that they would be interested in these FFA horses, or these youth horses that our kids had mauled and worked over for several years, and probably be way better than anything they could buy at a ranch horse sale. And so I was excited, and I thought, man, if AQHA would help us, we could get this in writing, we'd be good to go. Well, I quickly learned that there is a core of people involved in AQHA, not necessarily the employees, but people who are on committees that push and pull buttons that are drastically against any idea like this. They want to make sure that the only people involved in competitive events in AQHA are the ones who are the wealthiest and the most elite, the ones who can employ the very best trainers to go to AQHA events. And that was devastating to me, that there would be people like that. I mean, you kind of imagine it, but it's the truth. So a few weeks ago, I called Craig Huffines, and this was my last, I guess, effort at this before I put it to sleep forever. My youngest daughter just graduated from high school, so she won't reap any benefit of this. But I thought, I'm going to throw this out one time, and I called Craig, and he visited with me for probably close to an hour, and he really liked the idea. And he said, this is exactly what we're looking for in our ranch horse program, where we give the colts away to kids. They apply for a colt, and we give them these colts, but we don't have any way to really measure what they do a year or 2 years later with these colts, because as you know, the AQHA system, you have to have a trainer to be competitive, and so we really don't have a way to measure what these kids are doing and what they're learning and how they're actually doing with these colts. So he said that he was going to put his ear to the ground and talk to some people and see what they thought about this. So that was really encouraging, and that's part of the reason I'm doing this video, because I'm sure Craig probably forgot most of what I had visited with him about and some of these facts that I've just shared. You know, the original part of this program was that the kids would compete in 3 parts of this. And the whole part of this would be, the whole goal would be to prepare these kids to sell this colt on the other end. So we thought if there was an interview part of this where the kids were questioned about what they learned and what they did with their colts and how they did it along with their test, that this would weed out the kids who don't do their own homework, or they pay someone else to do their work. The second part is we felt it was vital that there's a confirmation part of this testing system where the colts were evaluated on their confirmation. And that sounds fun, but you try to put that in writing of how you evaluate the balance of a colt and how that colt is. We know when we look at it, but it's hard to put in writing. But if the kids are going to sell these colts on the other end as a broke horse, we need to have a way in the beginning when they start with a prospect that we can test and make sure that they have a colt that has all the parts, has good legs, that his balance is right, that he's going to be good, and he's not only going to meet and be able to finish the program successfully, but that the kids are starting with a colt that's going to sell well. And as we all know, looks are very important when people buy horses. Regardless of what they want or what their pedigree looks like, confirmation is extremely important. So we felt that was part of it, and then the performance part. In the beginning, the kid would take a colt through tests, like maybe how to pick up his feet, load him in a trailer, you know, how to do everything that he needs to do with that horse, and it would escalate to a point where he rides the colt, maybe in one event or several events through several tasks, loping circles, maybe a sliding stop, opening gates, all of those things. So these standards would start as he went through a series of tests, and they would end and be extremely difficult. And I want to point out that this is not a system where everybody gets a trophy. These standards need and should be extremely difficult. to reach the next one's going to take a lot of work and a lot of effort to get the colt through these sets of tests. And I think this is extremely good. I believe in this system. And you know, it comes back to what is insanity. It's doing what you've always done but expecting something different than what you've always gotten. And in the horse business, we are dying by the day. Our industry is crushed. And I know that core of people don't really care, the ones who don't want normal everyday people involved. But this would be a good system. Everybody could be involved, everybody would be on the same sheet of music, and it wouldn't give an advantage to the one who used a trainer or the one who cheated or the one who did something wrong. It would all come out in the wash. And so if you're going against a standard, whether you reach the highest standard or somewhere in between, that is what you set for yourself. That's a goal you set for yourself. And a colt could be sold at any part in between. And I think there would be a viable market for these colts if they were run through a test where they were checked on their conformation and their pretty and their sellability, their soundness, and then they were properly brought through all of these. So if you get a chance, send Craig an email at the AQHA or talk to somebody and let's start the dialogue of trying to save our industry. And our industry wouldn't only profit in this, but just imagine the youth. Just imagine if we had 1,100 kids in every state showing colts, what it would look like and how they would go search for their horse prospects that they were going to use the next year or the next year. And the amount of horsemen it would build in our industry. And I think there would be a place for the professional trainers. I think that the people who are good at clinics and the clinicians make way more money than our individual trainers. And there would be a huge demand for trainers to go around the country doing clinics for these kids who are learning how to work with their horses and coaching them and showing them how to do it themselves. I think it would be different, it would be out of the box, but I think it's a huge opportunity. So maybe this is the beginning of something great. I appreciate your time, and again, please contact Craig and AQHA and let's start this dialogue. Thank you so much.